Okay, so my thoughts on the Soundcraft Signature console. Coming from a guy that's been using a Mackie VLZ SR32 VLZ Pro for years, this was a breath of fresh air when I pulled it out of the box, sound-wise. I'm like, God, I didn't know stuff could sound this good, because I was used to that crispy and harsh sound that came from that old Mackie, and I'm like, man, I love you Britons, I really do. You guys know sound. And I fell in love with the brand ever since. Ever since I plugged in that microphone and tested, played with the EQ a little bit, I just love this console. It's a very sweet sounding, and it's a very musical console. It's the console that gives me the sound that I want from a mix. You know, warm and punchy and just engaging and convicting. I just love it. I love it. And I know basically Midas, I love Midas consoles as well. So this kind of, the sound is similar to a Midas, but it's not as thick and sweet as a Midas would be. It's a bit, it's like a precursor to a Midas. So if you know what I'm talking about, if you like the sound of a Midas console, this is basically kind of a step down, and it costs way less than a Midas to give you the same kind of sound, just a bit, I would say, a bit moist. It's a bit moister than a Midas, but it's still, it kind of sounds like a Midas. The EQ, again, very musical. Oh my god. Oh my god. Whether you cut or whether you boost, this console is very friendly on boost, and in fact, if you need to get rid of a problem, you don't have to take so much out like you would have on a normal analog console, such as, I don't know, an Allen and Heath Mix Wizard or a Yamaha MG series console. You gotta pull a whole lot of that frequency out just to get it to stop acting up. Well, with this console, with the unique EQ of it, you know, you just cut a little bit and you're done. You don't have to take a whole lot out of it. And again, that's due to the narrow bandwidth of the frequency. So, you know, if you take a little bit out, it has a very narrow bandwidth, or Q. So you don't have to do a lot of work when you try to address problems. But if you want to emphasize a part, you know, the boost, again, very smooth. This is a very smooth EQ. I love it. Very smooth, very musical. And it gets the job done. It really does. I love it. It doesn't sound harsh or sterile. You know, if you want to boost the low frequencies on your kick drum, it's just going to meld nice and well together. And again, I talk about the EQ in a separate video, but again, stellar EQ. And if you want to hear it, I would encourage you to watch that video I did about a comparison of the EQ to just a cheap old Behringer console. That'll give you a test of how the EQ actually sounds. Again, with the effects, you know, the effects, again, nice, luscious reverbs, very engaging modulation effects. You can have a lot of fun on this thing, especially with the delays. You don't get that much functionality, you just get parameter controls, but hey, you know, it's better than nothing. And the effects are, again, top-notch. Lexicon is a top-notch studio name, as well as a great name in the live field. They make great reverbs, great sounding delays, and the effects have just been luscious. I just love it. The preamp, again, preamp, thick, meaty, punchy. Love it. Now, one thing I was kind of nervous about it, I thought there was something wrong with this console when I got it. But I think it's very good to point this out here. Since I've been used to a Mackie console, you know, I'm used to setting the gain like right about here, and then already going at 0 dB on my meters. Well, with Soundcraft, and this is kind of inherent with most of their consoles, Soundcraft kind of makes you push the pre a little bit, at least when it comes to microphones. When it comes to microphones, you kind of have to set the gain a bit high, but line level sources, obviously you can just bag it back. And I found that I get a lot more headroom on this console than I did on my Mackie consoles, because, I mean, if you had a bass guitar that was just wailing through this thing, and you were already hitting red, you could easily, if you had the gain set even at 12 o'clock, you can just pull it back a little bit, and you'll be at around 0 dB. On the Mackie, when you did that, you would probably have to end up setting the gain like there, and then your meters would still be bouncing off the wall. So then you would have to tell the bass player to turn down his rig. Well, I guess to avoid putting a pad on this thing, Soundcraft made it easy for you. So if you had the gain set here and you needed to back it off a little bit, you could and still have a good amount of signal. And that's great, because it gives you the ability to put many instruments in many different areas onto the console without the console overloading. And so that's a great thing. Get a lot of headroom, but again, just keep in mind that really weak sources will sound really, really weak on this console, so you have to crank the gain. And again, they did that for a couple of reasons. One, to avoid putting a pad on here. Two, you get more out of that preamp, and that's what I love. You get the thickness and the warmth out of that preamp, so the more you drive it, oh, it's just great, especially on a vocal mic. And also, the preamp is linked with this limiter. So, yes, the more you drive this pre, the more you're going to drive the limiter. And it really takes a lot for this thing to kick in, I'm telling you. Someone has to be screaming in the mic in order to kick in this limiter, because it will not kick in if you just talk in it normally and expect it to kick in. You really have to drive this pre for the limiter to kick in. Or again, if you had that really, loud bass rig, it would probably kick in then and start to blink. The light, basically, the LED in here blinks, and so then you could set your gain back. And it does give you a nice limiting effect, but that's the thing. You have to really push that preamp for it to be engaged. Another thing I forgot to point out, here on channels 6 and 7, you get high Z inputs. So high Z basically allows you to plug a keyboard or a bass or a guitar directly into the console and go to line level just like that. Easy. So you don't need a DI, but obviously if you're running stuff from the stage, you probably still will need a DI to work with your instruments. It's a great console, guys. Especially, again, from a guy that just was so used to Mackies and Yamahas and their thin and dry sound. Coming to this and finally getting the sound of my dreams is just amazing. And again, I have countless videos of this console in action. I even recorded one of my gigs with it, and I posted it here on YouTube, so I'll put that in the description as well. But the recording function, which I want to say something about before I end this video. The recording function, super simple. All you have to do is get you can easily go out and buy these. And let me get the one that I have out of my bag to show you. Excuse me. But you need one of these special USB cables with the square end, as well as the normal flat USB in at the other side. Just plug it in. And then run the other end to your computer. Now, I said this in another video that you do have to download a driver from the Soundcraft website. I know some of you are probably saying, no, that's for multi-track only. Well, they're also making you do it for the regular Signature consoles. You need to install the Soundcraft USB driver in order to play back things from your computer to the console, which you can do on channels 15 and 16. This is also a playback channel from USB. As well as record content from the console to the computer. So you're going to have to download that driver. You just got to go on soundcraft.com to the Signature page. I went to the Signature 16 page and downloaded the driver there. Once you do that, it's a whole bunch of simple steps, really easy. Then you can start recording. And again, you get great sounding recordings from this thing. Obviously, the rest of it depends on you as well as your DAW. But I've gotten some great sounding recordings from this thing. Now, another thing that Soundcraft fails to mention here is for the non-multi-track signatures, the recording is all post-EQ and post-fader. Whatever you do on this master fader is going to translate to that computer. Whatever you do on these faders, as well as the EQ and the preamp, is going to transfer to the computer. However, with the Signature multi-track, the only thing that you're going to get is the preamp. And that's the, you know, once you plug in your sources and start recording, you're just going to get the preamp, and then it goes to your DAW. And I think they did that because you can basically put the whole track back into the console and then remix it. But those of you getting the regular signatures, you don't have to worry about that. Everything that you do on the console will be translated into your DAW. If you don't want that, I would probably recommend getting the multi-track. But as far as, you know, regular recordings, everything you do here will be transferred here. Effects included. This also includes effects. Great recordings on this console. I have so many, too many, but I've had so much fun with this unit. It's a great unit from Soundcraft, a very warm and very stylish looking console. I love how it looks. It's a great console from Soundcraft, and they really set the bar high, and it really should encourage other companies not to give up on analog. Analog is still alive and well, and with one of the most respected names in the business that made some of the best analog consoles, you know, this just can't be beat. Check it out for yourself. It's the Soundcraft Signature 16 console.